Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our workshop, which is part of the PTP workshop series. My name is Guliz Akkaymak. I'm a Policy and Advocacy Manager at World Education Services Canada. WES is a non-profit social enterprise dedicated to helping international students, immigrants, and refugees to achieve their educational and career goals, both in Canada and the United States. On behalf of WES, I would like to thank you and our speakers for joining us today. And I'm joining the session from Halton region, and the land I'm standing on today is a traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, part of the Anishinaabe Nation that extends from Niagara Peninsula across Hamilton, Halton, and Toronto to the Rouge River Valley. And I would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations for sharing their traditional territory with us. Today's topic, Mind the Gap, Securing Inclusive Pathways for International Students, couldn't be timelier given the increasing number of international student population in Canada over the past decade and the challenges they are facing in Canada. In our workshop, we will hear about two great initiatives that aim to address the hurdles international students encounter in this country. Let me introduce you, our speakers. Elena Schick is the Associate Director of International Services at Sheridan College in Ontario, and she also holds an active regulated international student immigration advisor license. She has over 15 years of experience in the higher education sector in Canada. Shavna Garrett is the President and CEO of Egenova Cooperative Limited. And before taking the lead of Egenova, she held registerial and enrollment management positions at different post-secondary institutions, including Acadia University and Mount Allison University. She also worked as superintendent, principal, and dean at international schools in Japan and China. As you know, in our program, we also have Sarah Asalia as a presenter. However, unfortunately, she is not able to participate today, and she sent her regrets. And the order of presentations today will be, as you see, is on the slide. Elena will go first, and then followed by Shavna's presentation. And coming to the format of the workshop, each speaker will have about 20 minutes to present, and then we will open up the floor for discussion. And you can use the Q&A feature in Zoom to pose your questions to our speakers throughout the workshop. If you look at your screen right now at the bottom, you will see different icons, and one of them is Q&A icon. If you click on it again throughout the session, you can pose your questions, but we will answer your questions nearing the end of the workshop. And before I invite the speakers to present their initiatives, I would like to set some context. International student population in Canada has tripled in the last 10 years. In 2022, there were more than 800,000 international students, representing over 30% increase in just 1 year. And the majority of study permits were issued at post-secondary level. And we know that international students play a vital role in Canada's economic, social, and cultural prosperity. However, they face various challenges both before and after they arrive, including receiving inaccurate or misleading information from recruitment agents, navigating policy inconsistencies related to their immigration status, enduring inconsistent or discriminatory treatment in securing their visas, being charged differential tuition fees, struggling to have access to affordable housing, finding commensurate and decent employment, and ineligibility in accessing some settlement and employment services. Speaking both professionally and personally, as a former international student myself, a comprehensive approach is required to offer vital solutions to address the challenges international students encounter in Canada. In doing so, it is very important to consider their entire journey, from pre-arrival to studying in Canada, and finally, transition into the workforce. Accomplishing this requires coordinated collaboration and cooperation among the many stakeholders in the post-secondary ecosystem. And I'm sure I share this vision, I'm sure I share this virtual stage with people with similar vision. So I would now like to invite our speakers to share with us the great initiatives they are leading to provide inclusive pathways for international students. As I said before, we will begin with Elena Schick, and then we will hand it over to Shavna Garrett for her presentation. Over to you, Elena.
Thank you kindly. Good afternoon. My name is Elena Schick, and I'm the Associate Director of International Services at Sheridan College. I am absolutely delighted to be joining you this afternoon and engaging in thought-provoking discussion on how to best support international students through their journey within our communities. Given that many of you are joining this session are from sectors that are outside of the post-secondary environment like myself, for today's presentation, I divided the presentation into two distinct parts. The first part's focus will provide an overview of the structure, as well as support services that are currently available at Sheridan College for international students. And for the second part of the presentation, I will focus on Sheridan's work in partnership with the City of Brampton and the participation of numerous stakeholders on the development of the Brampton Charter. So I personally have been in international education for over 15 years and have worked in the US and Canada. And much like my colleague, I was an international student myself. So I know what it's like to go through some of the struggles firsthand that many of our international learners go through as they navigate their new academic and social environment. So I've had the pleasure of working at Sheridan for the past 13 years, and I'm always looking for ways that we can better support our international students and make a positive impact on their lives. So before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that our presence today on various lands from which we join and our ability to have dialogue about international students is only available because of various Indigenous groups who welcomed foreigners to their lands. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather has been and still is the traditional territory of several Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Since time immemorial, numerous Indigenous nations and Indigenous peoples have lived in and passed through this territory. We recognize this territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty and the Two-Row Wampum Treaty, which emphasize the importance of joint stewardship, peace, and respectful relationships. As you may be joining us from different territories, we acknowledge the many diverse nations and territories that you're joining from. And I affirm that it's our collective responsibility to honor and respect those who have gone before us, those who are here, and those who have yet to come. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be learning, working, living, and thriving on this land. So to get things started, I would like to provide a bit of context about Sheridan College in particular. So I'll start with a brief overview of us as an institution. So we're a public post-secondary institution located in Brampton, Mississauga, and Oakville in Ontario, and offer more than 120 programs, which include 29 degree programs. And as a college, we're known for equipping our learners with multiple opportunities for work-integrated learning. We have over 21,000 students, and our international student population is currently at more than 8,000. So unlike many other post-secondary institutions, Sheridan has not had an international center since 2019. So rather, we serve our students irregardless of their immigration status through the Division of Students and welcome them through the Center for Student Success. Having all of our student supports under the same umbrella allows us to provide holistic services to all students and makes referrals and provision of joint supports that much easier to arrange. So within the Center for Student Success, which are located all across 3 of our campuses and are also available virtually, we have a number of services that you can see on your screen. So I know it's always nice for folks outside of post-secondary sector to get a sense of the types of supports that are available to the international learners as they progress through their journey. So specific to international students, we, much like most other post-secondary institutions, offer immigration support. So we know that immigration is a key component of the international student experience. So within our institution, our international student advisors are all RISIA certified, or I guess RISIAs, and are focused on supporting international students with any immigration questions that may be about their student status. So we offer one-on-one appointments in person and online, as well as immigration sessions that are scheduled every week. And as we know, many of our international students have the hopes of making Canada their permanent home. So to meet that need, we will partner often with IRCC, who deliver pathways to permanent residency presentations, along with questions and answer sessions that our students eagerly attend on a regular basis. As we know, health, both physical and mental, are crucial to the success for all of us. And all of our campuses have health centers that we encourage our international students to attend, to ensure that they're able to get additional support in navigating healthcare in Canada. So we hired a nurse practitioner specifically to assist with that and to ensure that our students are able to meet their medical needs right here on our campuses. In addition to counseling, which is obviously available for all of our students, both in person and virtually, we offer additional counseling support specific to international students through the Keep Me Safe program, which offers multilingual, 24 hours, 7 days a week support through a variety of ways, including chat and video, which is very popular with our students. And all of our international students are insured by Gardner Health Insurance for international students. And there's also a health promotion team that offers mental health support programming throughout the year. One project that I wanted to highlight as an example is we partnered with Soch Mental Health on the Pardisi project, which is a mental health promotion short film initiative aimed at addressing unique mental health challenges of South Asian international students. I highly recommend those of you who are on the line to take a look, because it's really wonderful work and can be utilized to engage in powerful conversations on mental health topics. So as we know, precarious housing is a big issue for many international students. And Sheridan has been working hard to ensure that we provide our students with additional supports to help them find safe housing. So we have a number of partners that we work with, and our priority is always safety and affordability. We recently piloted a quad model in residence as well to provide students with an additional option that allows them to find a more affordable housing option right here on our campus. So essentially, instead of having one student per bedroom, we have a 2-bedroom suite model within our residence. The students have bunk beds that allows them to stay 2 at a time, which results in significant savings for our students. We also drastically expanded our programming on housing offering. We provide housing readiness workshops on a regular basis. And we also started circulating a lot more information on housing for students well in advance of them arriving to Canada. We also hired an off-campus housing coordinator to respond to the need, as we do see that the number of queries that are coming in are quite extensive. So the housing coordinators are available for one-on-one appointments, as well as group sessions. And, you know, emergencies arise, as with any, I think, client group or students. So we do have some emergency and transitionary housing options available if they are required. So students can access a wealth of information on finding housing in Canada and guidance on what to look for in rental agreements, what are the tenant rights, you know, what are the safety precautions one must take before moving in or accepting a lease agreement, and just guiding principles on how to navigate their way through the housing complexities of finding rentals in Canada and the new community. So in addition to housing, we know that basic needs and food insecurity is also on top of minds of many of our international learners and non-international learners, to say the least. So we've partnered with Saidam Food Bank to provide nutritious and non-perishable food items for students to pick up that are available both at our campuses as well as through the food bank. So each of the food pack provides enough food for 2 months and allows our students to access sugar, salt, flour, rice, lentils, pasta, Maggi, etc. So that's part of the same packet. So we've served, you know, over 2,000 students just as of last month. And additionally to the food packages, we offer winter gear. So we know winters can be cold in Ontario. So we offer gloves and hats for those students who are in need. And we've also purchased some winter coats for distribution for those students that do require that in terms of the supports. So we believe the importance of providing student supports throughout the whole student journey is at the core So we know that student journey doesn't begin when they step foot on Canadian soil. It begins way before that. So in partnership with admissions and recruitment teams within Sheridan, we've been conducted pre-departure orientations for international students for more than a decade. And currently they're offered in a number of markets in person. So as an example, in India, we offer sessions in multiple cities in advance of when the students are scheduled to arrive or start their studies in Canada. And we have our own Sheridan staff deliver the content. And that content includes everything from health insurance, support services, Canadian classroom culture, how to approach a professor, where to look for support services, financing, budgeting, housing. So, things that are on top of the minds for students way before they arrive to Canada. We also offer those sessions virtually. So pre-departure is one of our biggest successes. It allows students to ease into the new environment while they're on their home soil, and certainly provide some assurances to the family members on the support structure available at Sheridan, as many parents and siblings choose to attend those sessions. And I think that gives a lot of comfort to, I think, families as a whole. So when I personally take part in those sessions, I'm always humbled at each orientation when I see big smiles of international students I may have met 2 months beforehand, and they recognize your face and they tell you all about their journey, and then they say, I remember what you said in the session. It was very, very helpful to me as I navigated my way through, the airport, or I figured out how to find housing. And I would say those are probably those moments that I hold dear in my heart. So amongst other supports available, we partner with a number of community organizations. So that's, I think, a very big part of the support structure that you cannot ignore, for sure. So we have community organizations that provide supports to our students with families. So if students are coming here with children, spouses, helping them navigate the landscape of enrolling their children in the regions of Halton and Peel, tax clinics for our students. We know that's a big topic that certainly requires some guidance, especially if you're new to Canada. Cultural and linguistic supports, workshops on employee rights to ensure that our international students are equipped with the knowledge on their rights as employees, and just the understanding of Canadian labor laws, and etc. So I think it's important to recognize the role that community organizations offer to the international students. And although our campuses offer a myriad of services, I think we need to really work closely with our community partners to ensure that our students have the supports in the community as a whole. Our partners have ears on the ground and are well connected in the community. And the way I look at it always is like we're puzzle pieces. We're part of the bigger puzzle of ensuring our international students have the support not only within our campuses, but also beyond our walls. So I wanted to highlight just some of the examples of partnerships and initiatives that we currently run at Sheridan. We partner with Service Canada that brings their staff to our campuses to issue social insurance numbers, to make sure that there's one less thing on the to-do list for international students and one less lineup to have to worry about or navigate through. And one initiative I also wanted to highlight is the WELL series. So WELL series is self-paced modules that are open access, which allow students to go through specific content depending on the step of their journey that they're currently in. So there's like the Start WELL module. It strengthens the required academic skills that students need in order to be successful at Sheridan. Transition WELL, which navigates them through different services available within the institution. Arrive WELL, talks about success in Canadian post-secondary community. Learn WELL, where students have the ability to access virtual supports and impactful learning strategies that they can utilize. And Work WELL, which is also very important within the student's journey, and that's to determine career planning steps and how to move forward. So now I'm going to move on to the second portion. So they're very distinct parts. So I did say that in the very beginning, and I think it's important that we look at micro and macro level supports available. So that concludes my first part of the presentation. I'd like to take a few minutes to focus on something that Sheridan is very proud of. I think, Brampton Charter for International Students Experience. And one of my colleagues just posted a link in the chat, which I highly recommend that you take a look at because it's a wealth of information. I'll be referring to a number of references throughout the second portion of this presentation. So for some time now, stories of international student struggles and gaps in supports, such as the ones you may be seeing on your screen, have been part of the mainstream media. I'm sure that this is no news to anyone who is currently listening to us, and that's on top of many of your minds. So a group of community leaders was convened by the City of Brampton and Sheridan College to tackle these challenges head on. And in a grassroots community-driven effort. So the idea was to engage key stakeholders to share their knowledge of issues, their experiences, to highlight some of the gaps and successes, and some of the causes of the issues and even possible solutions. So the Brampton Charter for Improving the International Student Experience is really a concrete action plan that will make a positive difference in the lives of international students who choose to study and stay in Brampton. So the charter builds on what we learned from research on accountability measures and their impacts, other post-secondary charters, legislative instruments that are out there, and the many compelling ideas that emerged from the International Student Summit that was held in 2022. So let me go back a little bit and provide you with some background information to get you a little more informed, I guess, about the charter. So in 2022, a roundtable group was created, which met on 5 occasions, to come up with a set of main issues that international students face in the city of Brampton and figure out the gaps as well as the successes. So following those meetings, suggestions on how to improve the international student experience was compiled, and the next step was to hold a summit in July 2022. You'll see a nice photo of from the summit in the slide. So the International Student Summit had over 200 leaders from post-secondary institutions, community agencies, all levels of government, who all assembled at our Davis campus in Brampton to examine the systemic barriers facing international students. And they began laying the foundation for the change. So the summit was co-hosted by Sheridan and the City of Brampton. And the summit was in person, but there were parts of the program that were available and streamed virtually. So the 2-day summit had 48 panelists from across Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And the program included a number of workshops that our attendees had the pleasure of participating in. And there was certainly lots of opportunity for dialogue. And it was wonderful to see colleagues from all across the sectors participate and engage in meaningful conversations. Following the summit, Sheridan then captured the key recommendations that emerged and refined them into the foundation for the Brampton International Student Charter. So when I said, please take a look at the website, that's where you can find almost like historical references. There's lots of resources and research that was completed before the summit that I would say anyone engaging with international learners would find helpful. So on the screen, you can gauge the diversity of folks that were present. So you see everyone from NGOs, entrepreneurs, government representatives. So it was almost like everyone was there, and it was wonderful to see that level of participation. Media was there. It was, 2 days of programming with lots and lots of opportunities for people from different sectors that oftentimes don't actually interact much with one another, engage in dialogue that all related to international student support. So it was just wonderful to have all these diverse folks in the same rooms. So what did we hear? Well, for those of you who work with newcomers, international students, this would not be a surprise for you. Stories of exploitation, false expectations, racism, systemic barriers, you name it, was there. Lack of culturally sensitive support were just some of the things that were left. Some of the positive outcomes, again, it allows us to step away and focus on collaboration and make changes to structures and systems. And let me just move on to this one. And there are certainly some lessons that we learned. And that was the importance of priorities and values, and the importance of listening to our students, inclusion and just overall the international student experience and what it is at its core. So you can see on the screen the guiding principles of the charter. Now, I won't go through them in detail, but you can certainly research them in more detail on the website that I mentioned earlier. And that was shared in the chat. So the signatories are committing to a list of measures grouped together under 5 themes and set of accountability measures that are meant to get the participants to self-report on progress and work together on data collection. So what are the next steps? I think, I've kind of sped through the process quite quickly, but again, please take a look at the website for the details. So the next step of the process is to reach out to the community. Improving outcomes for international learners will take collaboration between the students and anyone that they encounter. So Sheridan and the city plan to share the charter with Brampton residents through town halls, co-hosted by city councilors, social service organization, and other organizations within the community. So there will be an official signing ceremony in the year to mark the beginning of the commitment. So these are some of the quotes that you see on the screen. Again, those are taken from the same website, but I just think it's wonderful to see that level of engagement from so many sectors that our international learners are exposed to. So in closing, we hope that our work will inspire other jurisdictions to adopt a similar community charter of their own, creating really a national network of organizations that choose to hold themselves and one another accountable to provide, I guess, a more seamless and successful international student experience. So I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions at the end of my presentation. And now we'll pass it on to Shauna.
And thank you for that overview of all that's going on in Sheridan and at Brampton. So my name is Shauna Garrett. I am the president and CEO of Edunova, and I'm going to bring up my screen here, and we'll go through an overview of our Study and Stay program. So my presentation is titled Bridging the Gaps, Edunova Study and State Programs, Championing International Students in a Rapidly Changing Global Environment. So what I hope to do today is to provide you with an overview, results, and findings from our award-winning Study and Stay Nova Scotia program. So over the past 6 years, our program has provided support to more than 400 international students, representing more than 60 different nationalities. The program has successfully retained an average of 86% of the graduates in Nova Scotia 1 year post-graduation. Program alumni have started their careers in meaningful jobs aligned with their study plans and are thriving as new Nova Scotians. This session offers a review of the tools and practices that have been employed successfully to support international students to transition into the workplace using an 8, and it used to be 6 pillar approach. As you all very well know, during the implementation of this program, we experienced a global pandemic, and the world has changed in a plethora of ways, many of which we still don't understand. This session will provide an overview of what students, alumni, and employers are reporting has changed, and as a result, how the support that they need has changed. We'll also give you an overview of the Study and Stay Connect program that just launched this year, and our new methods and approaches that we've incorporated based on lessons learned over the past 6 years of the program, and how to best respond to new challenges in a rapidly changing pandemic-affected global environment. In addition to that, I'll give you an overview of the mapping that we've done of the international student journey in Nova Scotia, focusing on both student recruitment and retention challenges and opportunities, as we have created a curated suite of programs to support international students during studying abroad through their decision-making process and application stage to graduation and beyond. But before I dig in, I want to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki here. I am located in Halifax, and this is the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. And in Nova Scotia, we recognize that we are all treaty people. Little bit about Edunova. Edunova is located in Halifax, and we are a provincial cooperative nonprofit association of education providers, the only one of its kind in Canada. Our mission is to champion Nova Scotia as a leader in the international student experience while advancing social and economic growth in the province. Our membership is comprised of colleges, universities, language schools, and K-12 public and independent schools that work together to bring students from all over the world to Nova Scotia to study, stay, live, and thrive. So an overview of the session today, I'm going to go over a little bit of the background and history of our study and stay programs, talk about some of the challenges and what solutions we've tried to implement, go over the mapping of the international student journey, go through a quick overview of the study and stay programs, including our new Connect project program, talk a little bit about how we're building out employer connections, and a summary of lessons learned. And I'm sure there's many, many more to learn. So just to set the stage and give you a little bit of history to Nova Scotia. Back in 2013, there was a president of Acadia University, and he developed the Ivany Report, which was titled Now or Never, an urgent call to action for Nova Scotians. And in that particular report, the retention of international students was flagged as an urgent item. The province was doing a fairly good job of attracting international students, but we were losing them either in program or post-graduation. So there was a real focus on settlement of international students in communities outside of Halifax into some of our rural communities, a focus on developing welcoming communities, and starting to take a look at what international students need to be successful in the job market. One of the data points that we have been reviewing is the StatsCan data. And according to 2021 StatsCan data, only 11% of students who studied in Nova Scotia transitioned to permanent residency within 5 years of receiving their study permit. And that's compared to the national average of 25%. And only 25% students in Nova Scotia transitioned to permanent residency within 10 years, compared to the national average of 35%. So as you can see, in both timeframes, our outcomes are significantly lower to national averages. So we've identified that there is much work to be done in this area. So we knew what our challenges are, and there are many, and they have changed, but we were looking for solutions. So what we have done is we've mapped the international student journey in Nova Scotia, from the point of considering studying abroad to graduation, settlement, and beyond. And this is just a quick overview of the various programs that we have created over the past few years, which together support international student recruitment efforts to increase Nova Scotia's competitiveness overseas, to further differentiate Nova Scotia as a study destination of choice, to improve institutional study permit approval rates, which also lag compared to our national competitors, and to retain more post-secondary students in Nova Scotia post-graduation. So these projects are all interconnected, and they've been designed as a multifaceted approach to improve international student recruitment and retention outcomes at both institutional and provincial levels. So the conceptual framework that I have showed above includes from the pre-arrival stage to the application stage to graduation and settlement. So some of these programs are, we are in the midst of launching a Discover Nova Scotia New Student Resource Hub, which we are developing in partnership with iCENT. And that particular app will have all of our academic programs by our institutions lined up with job opportunities, jobs in demand in the province, which are also lined up with immigration pathways. So students will be able to see the academic programs, how many jobs there will be available in the province within 3 to 5 years, and then also what immigration pathways they will be eligible for if they follow those pathways. We have our NSISP Ambassador Award program, where we are rewarding domestic students and having them trained in their grade 12, grade 11, and 12 years to create buddy programs and run those at their university in their first year. And all of the students that go through that particular program that are successful in attaining the award are provided with $2,000 of a scholarship to stay in Nova Scotia and to run international student buddy programming in their first year of university. We provide RICIA training programs, so we are supporting all of our institutions to have at least one RICIA trained advisor on staff. We have partnered with CBIE to run an agent training program, and we have successfully trained our first cohort of 32 agencies. And all of those agencies are being trained in ethical and accountable international student recruitment practices, along with how to communicate with universities, process the study permit, and ensure that they are providing the right information to international students and their families to provide right fit opportunities. We provide refugee supports. We have partnered with WES, and we are providing free refugee supports to any international students displaced by war to settle in Nova Scotia. We are running our Study and Stay program, which I will go through in more detail. And we're also running a post-graduation immigration support program, which will provide free coaching with our CICs through another app, so that students are able to receive coaching free of charge from our CICs, because we have found that in this space, there are some bad actors that have been charging our students a lot of money to apply for their permanent residency in the province. And if you look at this wave or this pathway in the middle, this is the connectivity between all of these different programs, which is MyCreds. So within the next 2 years, all of our institutions will be onboarded to MyCreds, which is a safe and secure digital connection to exchange academic credentials pre-arrival, during their experience at university or college, and then with scholarships, scholarship applications, employment, and beyond. So it's a bit of a digital highway to exchange all of our student records, and also to ensure that we are eliminating document fraud in this particular process. So one of our big program highlights is our Study and Stay program. We have done a lot of research to figure out what we need to do in order to figure out why our international students have been having so much of a challenge to stay in Nova Scotia 5-10 years post-graduation. And we have surveyed all of these students, and every single year in this program, we survey the students and we compare it year over year. The top identified needs that our international students have communicated to us is they have been challenged with networking and developing professional relationships. They are having challenges with immigration. They have challenges with preparing for interviews. They don't feel like they have a mentor. They have challenges building a personal brand and marketing themselves. So we have used this particular data to inform the development of our Study and Stay program. And this is just a quick Gantt chart, an overview of the historical framework and background of the program. So it originally launched in Nova Scotia, and it was funded by the provincial government and ACOA. We launched our first cohort, and back then it was only 25 students. And then we have successfully graduated 7 cohorts of students. But in the meantime, we launched the Study and Stay program across the Atlantic provinces. So Nova Scotia developed the program, a bit of the recipe, nailed it down a little bit, of course, always being iterative and changing and innovating each and every year, but then went into each of the provinces in New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland, and helped each of those provinces set up their program. And those programs are now running their own program. So it used to be called the Atlantic Canadian Study and Stay program. And now Nova Scotia is back to running our own, and those provinces are running their programs off on their own, and we continue to communicate and share best practices, ideas, etc. A little bit about the success of the program. You can see the various cohorts that have graduated over the years. And if you take a look at all of those cohorts, on average, we are retaining 86% of students 1 year post-graduation. So if you think back to the 11% of international students that are staying 5 years post-graduation, you can see that there is certainly some merits in the development, the careful development of this program, the research-based approach, and the constant updating and the changing of the program. So I'll provide you with some quick facts. Started in 2016, we've supported more than 400 students to stay in the province. We are running pre-employment and career services and supports for our participants, along with the connections into local communities. We work a lot with our community connection programs. We have trained retention coordinators in, as I mentioned, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, PEI, to support hundreds of students in those programs. We work with 18 partners and institutions to provide this program each and every year. Last year, we had 88 mentors who supported 73 students, and most of our mentors return year over year. Many of them we've had since our first year. Last year, we had 27 nationalities in the program, and 27 program graduates said that they found direct employment as a result of their mentor. So part of this program, every single student is matched with an individual mentor. And in addition to that, last year, we launched our first entrepreneurship stream for 32 international students in partnerships with St. Mary's University. So last year, we were successful in attaining funding to launch our Connect project. So we now have 4 years of funding from Nova Scotia's Department of Advanced Education and ACOA Nova Scotia in order to launch a bigger and better program. So in the beginning, it was limited to only 50 students, and the program was only for final year students. And there was a gap because there were hundreds of international students that were not able to access programming or resources. So we asserted that if we wanted to increase retention of students in the province, that retention should start as early as year 1 of study, and we should not be limiting numbers. Therefore, we have launched the Study and Stay Connect project, and I'll provide you with an overview of that particular program. So the Connect project is now a 4-year funded project, which has 2 programs. So the final year capstone program, so that is a program with 100 final year students that have been selected every single year. And that's the program that we've been running for the past 7 years. And this year we have launched our foundation program for international students in all years of study. And we have 400 seats available each year for that particular program. In our capstone program, you can see the various levels of the pillars of support that make up the program. So this essentially is a program that is based on the need for supports in intercultural and professional communications. We run IDIs for every single international student. We have career support set up, networking opportunities, employer connection development. We have community integration that's available. As I mentioned, we have mentorship opportunities. We have access to immigration supports with our post-graduation immigration support program. And we also have our entrepreneurship stream. So that's a 10-month program. And our new foundations program, we have 4 levels. Level 1 is Nova Scotia and campus involvement. We have our community connections, early career supports, and pre-employment and employer connections. So those will be, that's more like a choose your own adventure type program. And that will be delivered mainly online. And we are going to scale that up and scale it out to engage 400 more students in learning more about their campus, more about their communities, and creating really important supports. In order for us to scale up, we need to be able to use technology. So we have developed an iSent app that is really helping us to connect with it will be over 2,000 students over 4 years. So this is essentially iSend, and I think Elena mentioned Sheridan is using it for their airport welcome desk, as we do as well. It's essentially an international office mobile software, allow for information, communication, engagement, networking, and tools of automation for our students. And using this app has allowed us to expand our programming to international students registered and studying at all Nova Scotia post-secondary institutions, and to connect with more students, and really start to create those bigger communities and connect our alumni with our current students, and our alumni with our mentors, and our mentors become alumni, and really start to develop these really important organic communities. So this is just an overview of our capstone program and a picture from our retreat this year. We have mandatory workshops, tasks, pre-employment support, a 6-month one-on-one mentorship component. Most of our students are meeting with their mentors once a week. We have retreats, we have conferences, networking events, and then program graduation. So in this particular cohort this year, we have 100 students from 32 different countries. And this is our foundations program. So our foundations program, as I mentioned, is in any year of study at a post-secondary institution. We have mini videos, lessons, quizzes, engagement activities, and we have done full community asset mapping of all of the resources available across the province. And what we endeavor to do is support the already existing programming that is happening at our post-secondary institutions, because there are loads, and then we try to bridge the gaps with the pieces that are missing. This is a quick overview of our entrepreneurship program. We had 32 students do our hackathons, our boot camp last year, our pitch clubs, and then graduated at the end of the year. These students also have access to immigration supports, and also seed funding to start up their businesses, as well as specific immigration support for entrepreneurs in the province. And this is just a quick summary of lessons learned, lots of lessons learned, in particular, how to connect with employers. So we have, over the last 7 years, worked with over 800 mentors, and we really, as I mentioned, see mentorship as a major strategy. That is creating lasting ambassadors for our programs, for communities, for our organizations, and for industry. But we're also trying to find ways to connect more intentionally to our employers. So this year we have developed a really great working relationship with the Atlantic Canadian Aerospace and Defense Association, and we are working with them to be able to host reverse job fairs. One of the things we find is we're often putting our students and having them pitch to employers. We're turning that on its head, and we're having employers and pitch to our students, recognizing all of the global talent that's right here in their backyards that they have access to. And they'll be telling students about what makes them special and why international students would want to be working at those associations. Other things that they do is they are sharing some of the technicalities about what an international student needs to be eligible to work in aerospace and defense. There are, from time to time, some employers that think that international students are not eligible due to the security clearance that they perceive that they need, and that they can't, they're not actually eligible to work in their industry. So these kinds of associations and industry association and connections mean that we're able to get in and work with associations to share how they are able to be trained and are able to work with international students, so that there's not these invisible barriers that international students face when they go to job interviews. Summary of lessons learned: collaboration is key. We have to be consistently open to new ideas and approaches. We can't get a fixed mindset and get stuck in our ways, because the world is changing so rapidly. The pandemic has changed everything we're doing so drastically. We need to continue to move, change, be flexible. We need to meet students where they are, listen to them, listen to their needs, learn as we go, connect with employers, and evolve, evolve, evolve. We know that we have to have an aligned goal, and we need to maximize our impact across the province. We share our data, we share our resources, we share our expertise. We are, of course, there is a lot of competition amongst our universities, but we've tried to turn that into co-opetition so that we're learning from and with each other. Again, very iterative. And we've been able to create relationships across the province and build those over time to be able to pull off some fairly effective international student programming. And I, of course, want to thank our funders, our Nova Scotia Department of Advanced Education and ACOA, who are funding our Study and Stay program for the next 4 years. And there's my contact information if anyone has any questions. And I will end it there and turn it back over to Gulis.
Thank you so much, Shauna. And thank you, Elena and Shauna. I'm sure our audience will agree with me that we just heard about 2 great examples of how to support international students in 2 different provinces, Ontario and Nova Scotia. And we have about just a little over 20 minutes for discussion, which is great because I'm sure that our audience have questions. And actually, I would like to open up the Q&A part of our workshop with our audience questions. We already have 2 questions in the Q&A feature. And as a reminder to our audience, we have Q&A feature on Zoom. It's at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to share your questions, either disclosing your name, or you can post them as anonymously as well. And let's begin with the first question. Elena, the question is to you, and it is about information provision before students arrive Canada. And I will just read the question. Pre-departure sessions are rarely offered in the settlement sector. What is the significance of this? And how can other settlement organizations adopt the practice of offering newcomers orientations or sessions before they arrive in Canada?
That's an excellent question. So I'm extremely passionate about pre-departure orientations because I think there's so much significance to them in terms of the international student experience overall and newcomer as well. I think it's important to think of the full length of the journey for anyone, newcomer, international student, doesn't matter, because their journey begins well before they arrive to Canada, and there's so much planning, research, paperwork involved, and I think that's a huge stressor. So I think we have to remember that when someone arrives, there are so many things on their to-do list. Figure out housing, groceries, transportation, where do you find work, how do you go to school, and linguistic barrier on top of that, cultural adjustment, weather adjustment. I mean, you name it, it's all there. So I think anything that we can do collectively to ease the arrival part of the journey for any newcomer will go a long way of easing their anxiety. And I think also importantly, it's the realistic expectations that you could have as a result of having some sort of program before the arrival. And I think realistic expectations are crucial. We know that, for example, life in Canada is very expensive, and I think providing information on typical costs of day-to-day items would certainly help ease the initial shock that I think many folks have when they just arrive, and especially recently, I would say. And there is a wealth of information out there on the web. In terms of life in Canada and what's life is like for a new immigrant, but it's overwhelming. And I think we're lucky enough nowadays to run so much virtually that it really doesn't cost much. You could provide all of that in a virtual format, and I think there's so many statistics you can gain as a result of what's being seen, what's being clicked on, what's really relevant to anyone who is not yet on Canadian soil. And I think it's also helping folks navigate their way through the overwhelming wealth of information out there. And it really makes it into an organized manner, and it makes sure that they're getting this information from reputable sources so that they're less likely to become victim to those that are don't have their best mindset in place, and those that may want to take advantage of someone who doesn't have the familiarity with the Canadian context. So I think that would be my answer.
Thank you so much, Elena. Definitely great points. It's very important providing information in the arrival stage, as you said, because it's actually starting early on before they arrive Canada. Mental preparation or like all other type of preparation they may need right before they come to Canada. So thank you so much. And we also have a question about the EduNova program, Shauna, and it is more about the program evaluation aspect. And the question is, have you had a chance to inquire about the experiences of international students in your programs, including positive and challenging encounters, as well as the advantages gained from the programs?
Yeah, great question. And of course, that's one of the more challenging parts of running international student programming, is ensuring that we're actually doing real detailed follow-up. So we are doing every single year a survey with every single one of our program graduates, and those surveys inform the development and the changes to our program for the next year. We do that with all of our international graduating students, and we're also doing that with our mentors. So one of the interesting pieces that I found from mentors is we're constantly thanking our mentors because we're so appreciative, because most of the students say that the reason that they got their, that got their job and had doors opened and were able to network to get jobs in Nova Scotia was because of their mentor, because so many of the jobs are hidden and they're not advertised, and these students don't have access to the networks that they grew up with that are so common here in Atlantic Canada. So our mentors give us the feedback every year of how transformative the experience of being a mentor has been to them, how they've learned a little bit of a new language, learned about a new country. So I'm constantly surprised and pleased about the mentor experience. And we use those experiences to continuously update the mentor experience as well. So tonight we're having a mentor appreciation night. So we'll have all of our 90 mentors there tonight. We will be providing student testimonials. So we continuously do student testimonials. So we ask students to take their phone and do a little bit of an overview, a home video, if you will, their experience with their mentor, and to send it in, and we'll present it to the mentors tonight. But also that feedback that we are receiving from our students helps inform how we use our app, because that's constantly in development, something we need to continuously change and update and make the user experience better and better. So yes, we do constantly ask for feedback, and it's so important because that's what I think really helps make the program what it is.
Thank you so much, Shauna. Yeah, as you said, constant evaluation of programs are really important to ensure that they're actually meeting the goals, right? And supporting international students in your case. We have another great question, but before we move on to that question, there's a comment in the chat about speakers' contact information. I believe that our audience have access to our presenters, our speakers' presentation slide deck. In the slide decks, you will be able to find their contact information. Okay, the next excellent question we have is, this question is directed to both of you. And the question is, how have your charter, Elena, and programs, Shauna, adapted to the COVID-19 pandemic and the needs of international students in this crisis situation? This is particularly important since international students are often ineligible for many settlement services in Canada. Elena, maybe we can begin with you.
Sure. I think we're lucky enough that the charter started, I guess, after the pandemic. So the responses that we received from all of the stakeholders already had the ever-changing environment in mind when they were being shared. So I think that's important. But I think if I were to just go back overall in terms of how our life have changed since COVID in terms of international student supports, I think we became more responsive. So we know that many, I think, large institutions and large organizations are oftentimes, I guess, lagging in terms of responsiveness. And I think allowing us to do so many things virtually has expanded just the array of programming and the reach that we have to our students. So, you know, during COVID, we had so many of our learners engage with us remotely that we had to figure out how do we deliver information that is received well by someone who is overseas, who may you know, have linguistic barriers in place, who may also have other barriers there that we didn't even think of before COVID. And I think, you know, I'll give you an example. So we're running an international student conference in partnership with our alumni office and our career services. And that's being done fully virtually to deliver relevant content to new graduates, to recent alumni, and I think, you know, back in the day, you wouldn't be able to do all of this all in one day for so many stakeholders, those that could be, you know, studying or working in other countries. We do have graduates that move back home or move to other countries. So I think allowing them to engage and continue that engagement after they've moved away is also very important. You know, we have a very diverse international student population. They're all over the world. They're all different time zones. And I think allowing them to engage and take advantage of the programming and all the resources as well. Like, I also think of immigration advising. You know, before COVID, it was all in person, and yes, they could have been virtual sessions, but nowadays our immigration advisors are able to guide students through the specific screenshots, through the IRCC website, and really engage in that dialogue while looking at the same screen. I mean, that is just ever-changing experience in terms of immigration advice. And again, we're no longer bound by the specific campus that the student may be at. Any student, regardless of their campus location, has the advantage of, you know, speaking to any one of our advisors. So I think those are just some of the examples I'd like to cover.
Great, thank you so much, Elena. And Shauna, now I will turn it over to you.
I think that's a great question. I'll use the example of Hurricane Fiona. We had a hurricane that was disastrous and hit Nova Scotia in the fall. And we had hundreds and hundreds of our international students impacted. None of them were eligible for the provincial government or Red Cross settlement services that existed in the province. And 211 was directing the calls to Edgenova. So we started to get, unexpectedly, a barrage of calls from international students that were stranded without a home, that had fire in their home, and had lost everything. So in that particular case, I went to the government to try to see if I could get some money to be able to distribute to international students, and was unable to do that because it's not there for international students. So was not satisfied with that. So went out and found a private donor, put out an application for assistance through our universities. So all of our universities send it out to students that they knew were impacted through our international student advisors. And within 48 hours, I had more than 300 applications of students that were requiring support. So we were able to help 242 students. Most of them were in Cape Breton and Antigonish. Those were two of the heavily impacted areas. And those are some of the things as a nonprofit cooperative we're able to do. So that is something that we will continue to do, is we will continue to try to find sources for funding if the provincial government or other settlement services don't have provisions available for international students.
Thank you so much, Shauna. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say, I think that's something we're going to have to consider with the climate crisis that we're faced with right now. There have been so many atmospheric events that are happening across our country, and I'm concerned that international students are not going to be supported throughout those. So I think it's something that we're going to have to be thinking about moving forward.
Excellent point, Shauna. Definitely going forward, it should be on the table, on the agenda for like different initiatives that are being created for international students. And I'm happy to hear that Egenova has been agile and flexible, supporting the students in those like difficult situations. So the next question, Elena, when you were responding to the previous question, you mentioned that COVID and moving to the online field and running everything online really helped bringing together different stakeholders. And the question in the chat is about difficulty of like bringing diverse stakeholders, because we know that it's not always easy bringing different stakeholders around the same table. And the question is, how has the Brampton Charter worked to bring together those different stakeholders, and what challenges may have risen from this approach, and what are the lessons learned that can help others in the sector?
I got too many screens going on here, so apologies. I wanted to make sure I'm actually able to see you. I think, you know, diverse stakeholders is certainly not the easiest way to find to common space, and I think that's really the key. You need to have a common goal in order to engage in conversation. So that's a huge piece, and I think virtually or non-virtually, you know, we're all human beings and we all want to make a difference. And I think as long as you found something that you're passionate about, and I think most folks, well, I would say all folks that are engaged in the charter have a common goal in mind, and that is to make sure that we have the appropriate supports for our international learners that are our community members and are the future of the community and of Canada. I think, you know, we came to this process with understanding that there's such great work that's being done, but it's fragmented, right? So we have the siloed approach where we're doing this excellent work that, you know, other folks may not be aware of. So I think just gaining a better understanding of what each one of the stakeholders does and how do they impact the international student experience is very important. I think what made it possible, again, is that we all have a common interest, right? So, and the other piece is, you know, what's Benjamin Franklin said, what is it? By failing to plan, you plan to fail, or you're preparing to fail. You know, we needed a cohesive and holistic plan. So the charter is the perfect prospect that outlines a roadmap. You know, all of us need some guiding principles and kind of like, okay, are we going in the right direction? Are we moving, you know, into the right sphere? So I think that is really where the benefit of it lies.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Elena. Yeah, I like the emphasis on like holistic approach, which is very important. And it has different aspects. Holistic approach in terms of providing services before their arrival, after their arrival, their transition to the labor market, and also holistic in terms of, again, including different stakeholders, employers, post-secondary institutions, community organizations, and so on. So thank you so much. Shauna, I have 2 questions for you in the chat. One is relating to your earlier comment about mentorship program. The question is, how do you reach out to the international students? Do you manage the mentorship and matching process in-house? So I think our audience requiring a bit more exploration on this issue. Thank you.
Sure. So in terms of how we reach out to international students, Egenova runs a number of committees. We run an immigration committee with all of the international student advisors in each of our post-secondary institutions across the province. We were meeting weekly throughout COVID, and now we are meeting bi-weekly. So we have constant communication with all of the international student advisors. So any opportunities, webinars, programs, we send them out to our international student advisors who are sending those out to students. In addition to that, of course, we use our iSent app and all of our push notifications through our iSent app with all of the students that are in that particular program, as well as our alumni community and our mentor community. We used to manage our mentor matching in OnPoints database. We have moved that to the iSent app, and we're now able to do mentor matching in the iSent app in terms of receiving applications from mentors and receiving applications from students, because we have more than 200 applications for 100 seats every year. We have a committee that's comprised of institutional reps from all of our institutions across the province, and we have criteria that have been identified. So we have a committee that makes decisions on who is chosen, and we're looking at more and more ways to recognize diverse experience in that process. In particular, because we're seeing more and more mature students that are coming to Nova Scotia with families. And many years ago, it used to be a lot of students direct from high school or direct from a university transfer. Now we're seeing people with families that have a first credential, have worked, and are looking to change their employment and their career. So we're looking for ways, in particular for mothers that have been raising children and maybe weren't able to be involved in all of the student unions or other kinds of groups as a volunteer. So we're looking at ways to represent diverse experiences in that matching process. The second question is related to if they're international graduates or undergraduates. Do you want me to go into that one, Elena?
Sure, we can go to that. It's about your target audience, whether you also provide services to international graduates.
Yeah. The main one we're providing to graduates is our post-graduation immigration support program. So we have recognized that there are students that graduate from university and they're no longer eligible for programs at their institutions anymore. So they're sort of at a bit of a loose end in terms of trying to get some assistance. So that particular program is targeted at that audience. So what we're doing is students that have their postgrad work permit and an employment offer, or just their postgrad work permit and want to stay in the province, we are supporting them through webinars with our CICs. We have tax webinars, we have all kinds of different services, and they are eligible to be able to attend any of those. And we have developed a community of graduates in our iSent app as well, and we're pushing out the information to them. It's a harder group to get your arms around, if you will, because they're no longer connected to our universities, and that's our community college, of course, and that's our main way that we've been communicating with students. So now we're developing relationships with our alumni offices as well, and we're trying to work through our alumni offices to get the information out into the international student community. But of course, this is all word of mouth. So once this gets out into the communities fairly quickly in Nova Scotia, or it organically moves through communities.
It definitely does. Yeah, thank you so much, Shauna. And Elena, there is a question about the Brampton Charter, and the question is about whether individuals or organizations that are interested and can participate in the consultation for the Brampton Charter. Is there still a consultation process going on? If so, how can individuals or organizations can support?
Thank you for this question. I'm actually very glad that the anonymous attendee has posted it. So yes, there's still opportunities for engagement. So the same website that was posted earlier in the chat, there is a form at the very bottom of that particular page that allows stakeholders or community members to express interest in participating. And then also by way of registering, they'll be kept abreast of any developments and if there's any further consultations that are going to be held. So I certainly encourage anyone who is on the call to take advantage of that. And I think I see there's another question, so maybe I should just address it, or
sure, briefly,
yes.
if you would like to do that. Absolutely.
I'm very efficient. for those who know me, I like to be very focused. I think, again, take a look at, the question is, what would be the recommendations for other post-secondary institutions looking to develop a charter? And that would be, don't reinvent the wheel. Right, there's so much information out there already on the Brampton Charter page, including resources, references, some of the work that has been done already in terms of the recommendations and findings. So maybe that's a starting point, right? It's the initiating that conversation that I think it's important. And again, keeping abreast of any developments so that once the finished product is there, for the taking, running with it and seeing how it applies to your own community and what would be some of the differentiating factors involved.
Yeah, excellent point, Elena. There is definitely no need to reinvent the wheel. Those people who are interested, and they can definitely reach out to to those who are involved in the preparation of the charter. I know that we are almost at time, but there is one last question in the chat, and I would like to have the opportunity to raise this question to you as well, because it's addressed to both of you, and it will be a nice way to end this conversation, I guess. Can you share if there are any other promising practices across the country that support international students in Canada? If there are any other best practices that you can think of? Shauna, maybe we can begin with you, and then I will turn it over to Elena.
Well, I'm learning some today from Sheridan, and with Elena's experience, I was a presenter at the Brampton Charter at the summit, so I'm thrilled to see that that has developed in that way. We are looking to develop more and more of an agent training program. So we have developed level 1 with CBIE, but we have identified that that's not enough. Our agents need more comprehensive support and training. So we are now in the development stages of a curriculum for level 2. We really believe strongly in ethical practices for international student recruitment agencies. So we have invested in putting the first cohort through that have graduated from level 1 into level 2. And we are going to expand our reach and have more agents trained in level 2 and keep them moving through. And if we need level 3, we will potentially look at developing level 3 as well. I'm also just making notes to myself here to contact the Halifax Partnership to see if Halifax might be interested in developing a charter with us. We had an Ottawa Day event where we had a group of our labor skills and immigration, advanced education, and our representatives travel to Ottawa and meet with the Minister of Immigration, IRCC, so Minister Fraser and Deputy Minister Chris Fox, and we're doing a follow-up session in person again in June and having them back, where we are feeding into the international education strategy from Global Affairs Canada to try to ensure that the needs of Nova Scotia and other small provinces in the country have their needs and their priorities met at the federal level. So I think that's another important part to the puzzle as well.
Great points. Thank you so much, Shauna. And Elena, now I will turn it over to you.
So I wouldn't say that I can think of a specific example, but I'm certainly aware, in all the years that I've been in international education, the ones that strike me are ones that work with other stakeholders, right? So that go outside of their bubble, that engage with all levels of government or community organizations to fill a gap, right? So we know that we can't fill every need of an international student or a newcomer. So how do we work together with those that are experts in the other area that we may not have the expertise in, and how do we puzzle it all together in a neat product or a program that allows folks to just engage in it from a holistic perspective. And I think the other piece is, how do we make sure that it's that we're keeping in mind the full length of the student journey? Right. So, there's the typical touch points, your orientation, your graduation, but what happens in between, and what happens before orientation, and what happens after graduation? So making sure that students feel supported at all parts of their journey. And I think that's how you give that sense of purpose and confidence to the students, on allowing them to go through the process and meet their goals.
Yeah, thank you, Elena. Definitely ongoing and open conversation and collaboration among different stakeholders is very important, and also being open to learning from other examples, other practices, so that we can improve the existing programs too, or create new programs, new charters, and so on. So with that note, I would like to thank you, Elena and Shauna, for sharing your knowledge and insight on such a critical topic today with us. And this has been a stimulating and insightful conversation. Thank you again for joining us, and for our audience, thank you as well for joining us today, staying just a little bit over time, and we would like to thank you for your questions as well. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you in another conversation on international student issues.